Hello, all, and welcome back to Bookworm Banter. This week, we're going to be going over the book Black Cake, a novel by Charmaine Wilkerson. As discussed last week, I did let you know that we're going to review this book. One cool thing that I liked about this book is that in the back, it does have book club questions to ask, questions and topics for discussion. So we'll go over some of those as we progress. But first, I want to give you my rating of this book because I think that's really important for new readers, whether or not you want to read the book. For this book, I give it like a rough 7. I have looked at other people's reviews of this book, and they were all positively radiating, and someone suggested this book to me. It's not the typical book that I personally would read. As I said in my podcast intro, I prefer more of like science fiction, fantasy novels. So for me, this book was a little out of my wheelhouse. I'm glad I read it, but it's not a book I would particularly pick off the shelves. So maybe I'm a little biased. But also for me, any book that I read, if I wouldn't suggest to a reader to read this book, then it gets kind of like a lower rating for me. And some people obviously really liked this book, but for me, I didn't, and I'll tell you why. One of the biggest reasons why I didn't like this book was the time jumps. For me, the story is being told from... oh my goodness, I'm going to have to edit it out. So the story is being told from the past and the present, and it's also being told from like 4 or 5 different perspectives throughout the book. You have the main character who is the mom. Wow, this is bad. This is my first one, guys. This is bad. I'm going to have to edit this out so much. Eleanor. Okay, guys, for a second, I forgot this main character's name. So the book is being told by several different people, and I probably forgot this character's name because y'all will find out later in the review why I probably forgot this character's name. But so the story is being told from the perspective of Eleanor, from the perspective of Byron and Vinny. And it's also being told, kind of narrated by the attorney of Eleanor, Mr. Mitch, who is fulfilling her will. And then it's just like time jumping. So it's Eleanor's life story as a child, then her life story as like a teenager, her life story as a growing woman, and then her life story as a adult and parent to her 2 children. So that's like just 4 different versions of one character. And then you have the other characters telling the book as well, Byron and Benny. So for me, that was one thing I didn't particularly like about the book, was that it is being told from so many different perspectives. And they introduced the characters very early on into the book. So it's kind of like, wait, who are they? Wait, what time are we in? So for me, that was I wouldn't say confusing, but it just wasn't like as enjoyable as just reading a book that flows. I don't mind books that go into like a past or a present, but just books that jump all over the place and just back and forth, they're not really for me. So if you haven't read the book and you're interested in it, as long as that's something that you think that you might enjoy, then by all means, you go for it. You pick this book up, you read it. It was an easy read, but yeah, for me, it wasn't my favorite. So overall, I gave this book a 7 out of 10. My favorite character, which was controversial. So I read this book. I explained to you guys in that first podcast that I started this podcast because my friend and I were in a book club together. And this was a book that we decided to read together. I did do a review with her. And so some of the things that we talked about, I feel like for her are going to be controversial. But for me, there were things that I liked about this book and didn't like about this book. So first off, I'm going to say the thing that I liked most about the book was the character development. I mean, obviously, the book starts out with the matriarch of the family passing on. The father had already passed many years before, and so the book starts with a broken family trying to piece back together what they lost in the wake of their mother's death. And you just learn so many things about the characters throughout the book that you're like, wow, that explains this. And oh, wow, I didn't know that about that character. And oh my God, this is all tying together. So throughout the book, there are like, ooh, let me turn to the next page. There are page turners in the book, don't get me wrong. So that was one cool thing that I liked about the book. Another thing that I liked about the book is just being able to tell the perspective of a story from a woman and a woman struggling to find her own identity, find her own way, and change generational curses. That is one thing that I will say I took away from the book. So that was something that was nice about the book as well. My favorite character throughout the book, as I said, there are several characters throughout this book. So many characters throughout this book. You have the family maid, the father of the main character, Johnny Lynn. And then you have the two children, that was my book closing. You have the two children and you have the attorney. So with that being said, my favorite character in the book was definitely the father, Johnny Lynn. And that was very like, what? For my best friend, when I told her that was my favorite character. And that's really just my favorite character because I thought that he had the most turmoil throughout the book and just really fighting to be who he wanted to be, who he thought he needed to be. Losing his wife. I mean, there were so many things that he had gone through and still tried to stand up and be a man and just failing throughout the book at doing so, that I kind of not admired but related to in a sense, just because I didn't have a father figure growing up. So to see the flip side of that, of having just only a father figure and what that looks like and the struggles of raising a daughter by yourself, especially in the time of error that they were in, it was definitely hard for him, and trying to keep his life together, trying to keep it all together for his daughter. He definitely had an alcohol problem, so some of those things kind of resonated with me, and I really liked that about him. But I also liked his kind of journey towards the end of the book, just kind of finding a new life and getting new children, and ended up being in the same exact place, not same exact place, but like moving to the United States and being not that far away from Eleanor. And him kind of all along knowing who killed. Yeah, kind of knowing all along who killed. I can't remember that man's name to save my life. The guy that Covey was supposed to marry, who got murdered. Him kind of knowing all along who killed that person. I thought that was like really cool way to end his story. And so yeah, for me, that was my favorite character. I'd love to hear from you guys who your favorite character was. I'm sure it's like my best friend, it was Covey. Yeah, so I'm sure that that's going to be most people's favorite, but for me, it wasn't. So another thing that I thought was pretty cool about the book, one of my favorite things about the book was the best friend. Let me remember her name, because I'm terrible with names. The clumsy girl. One of my other favorite characters was Bunny. She was great, and just the type of love that she had for Covey. Granted, it was a more of a sexual love. But the love that she had for Covey, the support that she had for her, just the willingness to help her in any way that she could. It's 2023, y'all. They don't make friends like that anymore. I don't know how many of my friends is going to take a charge for me. So the fact that she went out of her way to do that and protect her friend, and then ended up meeting her in the end of the book, like, oh, just kismet. I loved it. That was one thing I really did like about the book. Okay, so overall, yeah, those were probably my two favorite things. The worst thing about the book, I will say this, like, spoiler alert, if you haven't read it, this is probably the worst spoil, and really just the worst thing about the book. Matilda, or Mathilda, however you say her name, that's Covey's mom, who ran off to try and find a better life for her and her daughter, and was going to send for her daughter when she got established in a new country. It was total BS how they killed her off. It just made no sense to me. Like, I know that they tried to make it seem like Matilda, Covey's mom, was just this loving mom who got in a terrible and unfortunate accident. But I almost feel like it would have been better to just pull a Johnny Lynn Cook and like have her start a whole new life and just be this whole new person who just couldn't bring herself to face the terrible things that she did or whatever. Like, her just falling off a ledge at Niagara Falls, like, what is that? I mean, yeah, wasn't for me. That, I wouldn't say terrible writing, but I feel like they definitely could have given her a better storyline, a better ending, or tied that up with a prettier bow for me. Okay, so now we're going to go over these book club review questions in the back, y'all. If you have the book, it's on page 393. I'm sure you've seen the questions if you've read the book. So I'm going to read the questions and then give answers. Some of these things we probably already have gone over. So first question was, what was your favorite part of the story, favorite location and time period, the character who interested you most? So for me, my favorite character, obviously I said Johnny Lynn Cook. I think he had the highest arc of the characters, and it was very sentimental to me that he had tried to kill himself in the ocean where he thought that his daughter had died. So just like I said, the type of turmoil and confliction that he had throughout the book was really touching to me, I guess. Favorite location and time period. Obviously, my favorite location and time period was Covey and the island. Just because I think that was her most authentic self, and seeing her grow up as a young woman and having a father who wasn't always the most stable, losing a mother who she thought left her, and then trying to piece together her life and find joy and pleasure within that was really great. I loved her and Gil in the beginning, like so cute and so innocent, and just a real true love story. But also Covey finding herself as a woman and standing up for herself and deciding what kind of life she wanted and deciding that she was going to make that life happen was really admirable, and I really liked that about her. So that was probably my favorite location and time period. What was my favorite part of the story? My favorite part of the story was honestly when Covey got to reunite with Bunny. I think that was just so beautiful, and the way that they did it, it was really nice because Bunny had thought that she was dead for so long, and just the joy that they had for each other and still the love that they had for each other after all those years was really great to see. Okay, black cake. Question number two. Black cake was a Bennett family recipe made for weddings, anniversaries, Christmas, and other special occasions. Do you have a traditional family recipe? What does it mean to you? I don't know about you all as listeners, but my family is probably about as dysfunctional as this family in the book. So for me, probably more probably more dysfunctional because we definitely do not have any traditional family recipes. My mom certainly showed me how to cook. Like, I can make the things that she showed me how to make. I wouldn't necessarily call that a traditional family recipe, such as something like a black cake. So I don't have one of those. What does it mean for you? I guess it just means that my family is not that traditional. Moving on. Question number 3. In Black Cake, Eleanor Bennett leaves her children a voice recording disclosing the story of her life. What was the most surprising part of her past for you, the saddest, and the most interesting? So one of the things I will say about this book that surprised me was Eleanor's illegitimate child. And she had a child born of rape. And that was probably the saddest part for me. And the most interesting that she ended up finding her. That was probably the most interesting. What was the most surprising part of her past? So the most surprising part of her past, as well as the saddest, was the second part of her life, where she essentially stole someone else's identity who died in a crash. Eleanor Bennett is whose identity she stole. She stole her identity to move on with her life, and after a tragic train crash. So that was probably the most surprising of all, that she had to start her life over like twice, or have 3 different lives. And then one thing I will say about the saddest part of her story, like being raped, like for me as a female, I always wonder, like you hear like the Me Too movements and everything like that. And I personally have never experienced such a thing. You know, Covey, Eleanor, whatever you want to call her, she was in the workplace and was assaulted by a manager, someone who had treated her like taking her under his wing and giving her opportunity and really cherishing and admiring her work, who ended up just being there to pursue something and be inappropriate, and her feeling like she couldn't say no, her feeling like she like just let it happen. I personally have never experienced that, and it seems like such a common theme for women. And I mean, I don't know if the women that I speak to just don't want to talk about it, or just kind of like let it go and move on and to never think of it again, like it's too tragic or whatever. But yeah, I asked my best friend, who we read this book together, like, had she ever been assaulted or sexually approached in a way that she didn't feel comfortable with, and she said no as well. Now, obviously, as women who are, I'm not gonna say that, obviously as women, we get approached, we are pushed up against, and sometimes inappropriate ways, but also very subtle ways, that it's like, is it just me or am I tripping? So like sometimes that happens and things, but like the type of uncomfortability and assault that is spoken about in this book, I really just truly wonder how often that is happening for women of color especially, but women in general, where they're being taken advantage of or misled to believe that something is one way and someone else has malintent for them. So that was just really sad for me, because I never want to see or hear about that happening for women. I'm sure most people don't. Okay, but anywho, moving on to question 4. Secrets are a huge part of the novel. Why do you think Eleanor kept her story from her children for so long and only shared it posthumously? Which do you think is more complicated, the secret you keep or the secret you share? So obviously we know why Eleanor kept it secret for so long and why she didn't tell her children, was because in her mind she was a murderer, and she thought that if her children knew that she had escaped charges of possible murder or manslaughter, what have you, that they might judge her, that they perhaps wouldn't understand the journey of her getting to where she was going to be, but also just speaking of who she is, who she was, what that might have done for their family. Like, would she be extradited back to her country for trial and jury? Would she have some type of prosecution? Would people come looking for her because the family, I don't feel like flipping through this book to remember the name of this family that whose main person was killed at their wedding. Oh, I could, but Little Man. Ha! So yes, Little Man. The family of Little Man were supposedly this just powerful family. So I think that she kept that secret and didn't want to tell anybody for that reason. And maybe sharing her story after her passing was her way of giving history for her children, having her children all be together, because obviously if she didn't explain her other daughter and how that came to be, like, they would have never met. So Benny and Byron would have never met the other daughter. So I think that's why. Which do you think is more complicated, the secret you keep or the secret you share? They're both complicated. I mean, come on, people. Like, secrets don't make friends, but Mama always said, if you ain't got nothing nice to say, don't say nothing at all. So they're both extremely complicated. If I had to choose one to the other, for myself, for any individual, I think the secrets you keep are going to be the most complicated, because you have to keep up with those secrets. You have to patternize those secrets. And what I mean by that is, if you start a lie or keep a secret, then you have to keep the pattern of that lie or that secret. So if I say, oh, yesterday I went to the mall to buy bras. Well, if I didn't actually buy bras, now the next day I actually have to go out and buy bras, because somebody might be like, oh, I thought you said you bought new bras. Why are these ones falling apart? Or if you said like, oh, I went running. I go running every day, but you're not losing any weight. So whatever the secret is, how it begins is how it also has to end. And the trajectory of that secret has to be the same from beginning to end. So once you start a secret or you start a lie, you have to keep going with it. So that is sometimes really difficult. But also, if you are keeping secrets that are negative for you, it's very hard to keep that inside you. Like, if you're keeping secrets to save someone else from hurt or pain, that can sometimes cause hurt and pain for yourself. So the guilt that you feel, or the heaviness that you feel just carrying that with you always to save someone else, is definitely something that I feel like we can all relate to, but it's also very difficult to do. But certainly on the flip side of that, secrets that you share, they're going to have their consequences. And who wants to deal with consequences? Like, can we just live life and do whatever we want and nobody do anything and like nobody gets hurt? Would be nice, but that doesn't happen. So they're both equally hard. Sharing or keeping secrets, they're both equally hard. Okay, so question number 5. Eleanor wanted Mr. Mitch, Benny, and Byron to listen together to the voice message she left behind. Why do you think she specifically made this request? What would have been different if Benny and Byron had each listened to everything separately? If everyone had listened to everything separately, Byron might have listened to it. Benny probably wouldn't have. She was pretty much done with that family at that point. She was just coming in to like show face, and from how the story's being told in the beginning, that she was just coming in to show face. And Byron, he's just so cold and not willing to understand or sympathize, empathize, relate to what was happening, that he probably wouldn't have listened to it either. He was also in a really cold and dark place because his girlfriend had just left him. So yeah, I don't think that he would have perhaps listened to it. Benny definitely wouldn't have listened to it. And Mr. Mitch, he was already there listening to a recording, or at least heard some of it. But Mr. Mitch, he definitely would have listened to it, and I think that he would have been even sadder to not have known that about the woman that he loved. Why do you think she specifically made this request? She made the request so they could bond, so they could get back to a good relationship, that Mr. Mitch could be inducted into their family, and that they could understand her all together, and that trauma creates bonds. So I think that is why that she wanted them to listen to it all together. Would have been different if Benny and Byron had each. Yeah, that's why I answered that. Okay, so moving on, question number 6. What are your thoughts on Benny and Byron's relationship? Why was it complicated? How did they grow apart after being so close? If you have siblings, do you understand the push and pull of their relationship? Yes, 1,000 times. I have a younger brother and an older sister, and those relationships definitely get complicated. I mean, you are completely different human beings. Even though you grow up all in the same house, like, you're still your own person, and oftentimes that just conflicts. And I am the middle sibling, so I'm always just trying to hold it together, keep the family together, hold everybody close enough to just keep the family going. And I guess that's my curse as a middle child, but I definitely understand the push and pull of their relationship. And I just think that they grew apart. One, they had like a 9-year age difference, I think, something like that. So that's definitely one way of growing apart. And it was complicated because Byron is so stoic. He's so analytical, and just the family, obviously tradition meant a lot to this family. And I think the life that Benny was living was extremely untraditional, and they were just completely not willing to understand her life, her means to happiness, and accept her for who she was. And that is essentially what drove them apart. Okay, so question number 7. Why do you think Bert and Eleanor disagreed with Benny's life choices? Do you think they were wrong to be so hard on her? Why or why not? Absolutely. I mean, I have children of my own, and I will love them no matter what they do with their lives. If they want to be a cook, if they want to be an artist, if they want to scrub floors, if they want to be a doctor, like, that is one thing that I did not agree with Bert and Eleanor just kind of disowning Benny, mostly because, like, she dropped out of college and she just kept bouncing around, like, not really knowing what she wanted to do and changing jobs. They didn't agree with that. And then her life choices, obviously, of being bisexual, like, that's no big deal. You're gonna love who you love. So, and as a parent, your number one job is to love, accept, and support your children. Do you think they were wrong to be so hard on her? Absolutely. As I said, support. My mom, number one supporter. She's super great. Amazing. She would support me if I was shaking butt on a pole. Like, she wouldn't care. If I'm going to be a stripper, she said, go out there, baby, and be the best stripper that you are. Be the best stripper that you can be. So I think that everyone in their life should have a parental figure that can support them through anything, because just life is so hard. Growing up, adulting, and just doing life in general. So having a good support system, having someone is going to love you unconditionally no matter what you do, that is a necessity, and that's supposed to be your parents. So they were extremely wrong. Question number 8. When Bert was too stubborn to apologize to Benny, Eleanor stayed by his side out of loyalty. Do you think she made the right decision? Why or why not? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Bert was he's tripping. And he knew he was tripping because he was literally taking trips to see his daughter and not even saying anything and just showing up and watching. And that type of pride and stubbornness baffles me as a parent. But Eleanor sticking by Bert's side out of loyalty. Did she owe him her loyalty? Yes. Like, he stuck by her side through a lot of things. But when it comes to your children, wrong is wrong and right is right. And Bert was wrong. And they had every opportunity between his death and Eleanor's death to make things right with Benny, and they didn't. I get being disappointed and upset with your children for a time, but a time has to pass. And you have to be able to like move on and be the bigger person or the bigger parent and apologize or say, hey, like whatever's going on between us, it's not worth losing you for this long. Like, can we talk? It doesn't have to be like, come back to me, please. It's just like, can we talk? Can we have a conversation? Can we sit down and talk about what happened and maybe try and move past or forward and like hear each other's perspectives? So yeah, she was definitely wrong. Wrong 100%. Question number 9. While listening to the recording, Benny and Byron discover that Eleanor kept a secret from Bert for their entire life together. What do you think of Eleanor's choice to keep that secret? How do you think Bert would have responded if she had told him the truth? I think Bert would have accepted her for who she was. He loved her since the moment they met. So I don't think there could have been much that she could have told Bert that would have deterred him from her. And Eleanor's to keep that choice, Eleanor's choice to keep that secret from Bert, it is what it is. Like I said, everyone keeps a secret, and she did it with love in her heart. So it's not the worst thing, but at the same time, I don't think it was a necessary thing. And I get her being scared of what telling the truth would mean for not only herself, but the people who helped her out of her country and out of that situation. But yeah, I think Bert definitely could have kept a secret, and he would have loved her no matter what. So it was her choice to make. Do I agree with it? I think you really can't say unless you're in that position. Okay, number 10. Even though Lynn had run a business and raised a family on the island, he was still seen as an outsider. Why do you think that is? Well, we all know the answer to that. Because he was not of the island. Like, his family were foreigners. They came over, bought up the property, took up the land, speak the slang, but that doesn't make you from here. And it's an unfortunate thing that is how it is seen, but especially when you go to smaller communities, smaller islands, smaller places, they are very weary of outsiders. And even if you marry one of their people, that doesn't make you one of them. You're still an outsider at the end of the day. So it's unfortunate, but that's just how it is. And that's at all parts of the world. It's not just a Black and Asian thing. That's anywhere you go that you're an outsider. You could literally be like the same complexion, same person, same ethnicity, whatever. And if you're not from there, if you're not a native, if you didn't give back to the community and whatever, like, you're still going to be an outsider. Okay, number 11. The thing about identity, there's your family history, there's how you see yourself, and then there's what others see in you. How is this statement true for each of the characters in the novel? Me oh my. The thing about how you see yourself, there's your family history, how you see yourself, and what others see in you. As I said, there are a lot of characters in this book, so this question would be really hard to answer, and quite honestly, quite boring to answer, because there are so many characters. Mr. Mitch, John Lyncock, Little Man, even if you want to throw him in, like, all these characters, you could go on for days and days with this question. So I'm gonna pick to answer this question about, like, the main characters. So I'm gonna say Eleanor. Her family history, how she sees herself, and how others see her. Obviously, she saw herself as a bright swimmer, a woman who had drive, and also a woman who had secrets. What others saw in her depends on what time era, because if you talk to the people at the island, she was a possible murderer. If you talk to the people who knew her in California, she was a beautiful woman who was a loving mother, loving wife, great swimmer. And then the family history, like, I mean, obviously her family history is very torn. So if people were judging her just based on that, then the judgment wouldn't be good. Benny's family history, if you just took a look at her family history, then you would think that she should be like this super successful person, just like Byron, because Bert was a super successful lawyer, and her family was just bright and successful and hardworking. So if you took a look at Benny, you'd probably be like, oh, those things don't match. Like, how is it that your brother is like this all-star biogeologist or whatever he is, biologist, marine biologist, and you're like answering phone calls at a phone center? How she sees herself, I think Benny definitely has the most like self turmoil, just because of her being bisexual and not being accepted by her family, not being accepted by her friends in college, getting beat up for that even, and then getting abuse from one of her significant others. I think she has like a lot of self-reflection on who she is and how she wants to view herself. And then what others see in her is, I think, confusion is probably like the biggest theme of the book, of what everybody says about her, excluding herself, because they just don't understand, or they didn't take the time to understand. So, and then Byron's family history, that lines up for him. Everyone was very stoic. Emotions were very closed off. Very success driven, so that's not a surprising thing for him. How he sees himself is this awesome, arrogant person who is just so ahead in life and just so amazing and handsome and very cocky, very conceited guy. And then what others see in him, I think what others see in him is kind of sad. The girlfriend, I want to say her name was Michelle, but I can't remember. The girlfriend, I think, saw like the confidence and the intelligence of him, and it really admired that. But I think the more that you got to know him, the cockiness and the conceitedness and the intelligence turned more into like lack of time, lack of patience, lack of love, lack of ability to love. And that's ultimately why they broke up. Okay, so question number 12. Forgiveness is also a major theme in the novel. Eleanor struggles to forgive herself, Marble to forgive her parents, Benny to forgive herself, Byron to forgive Lynn. Do you find any of the characters' actions to be unforgivable? Why or why not? I would say, if anything, the most unforgivable ones would be Marble's parents, like lying to her the whole time that she was not adopted, and continuing that lie on and on again, even as she grew up and her hair was different and her skin was darker, and just not being able to find her way and feel centered in who she is without that knowledge was, in my opinion, unforgivable. If you're going to be parents who especially adopt children of color or children who are not of your ethnicity, then I think that you need to be upfront and honest with them so they can learn their heritage and also just know how to take care of themselves. Like, black hair is no joke, so mixed hair, black curly texture, mixed hair, whatever it is no joke, and you really do need to learn how to care for your hair. And I think that's the number one thing when adopting a person outside of your race is hair, especially for the girls. Benny to forgive her family. Benny family did her wrong, so I mean, I don't think it should have gone on as long as it did, and she definitely could have tried to mend things prior to. I feel like as adults, forgiveness is a two-way street. Communication is a two-way street. So while I feel it should have been on Eleanor and Bert to reach out to their daughter to mend things, she could have also tried the same. I don't think that's unforgivable, though. And Lynn's behavior was definitely unforgivable. The way he tried to pimp out his daughter, the way that he just moved to a whole different city, new state, new country, start a new life, and have such success. And after he had heard that she was like possibly alive still, I mean, he didn't even try and find her. And granted, she didn't try and find him, and maybe he felt some type of weight about that. But yeah, Lynn was just shitty the whole book. And throughout the book you see or you read how much he loved Covey and wanted to provide for her in ways that he couldn't, and that being his reason for trying to pretty much, pimp her out, sell her off to little man, but still unacceptable in my opinion. I would never. And I get that those are different times, but yeah, I would never do such a thing to my daughters. So, yeah, guys, that is black cake. There's also a recipe in the back of the book on how to make black cake if you're interested. I've never had it. It sounds like a lot of work, and I would love to try a traditional black cake. Like, if I ever go to a Caribbean country and they have black cake, I would definitely want to give it a try, just based on this book, because they make such a big deal about it. But let's see, anything else I can think of? No, not really. Overall, like I said, I give this book a 7 out of 10. It wasn't a difficult read. It was an easy read. There were parts where I was like, ooh, let me read the next chapter because I have to know what's happening. So I wouldn't say it was like a nail-biter page turner, but there were points in the book that it was like, let me just get to the next chapter and then I'll stop reading. But yeah, guys, tell me what you think of this book. Tell me if you liked it. Give me a score and your reasons for why that score is what it is. Next week, we are going to be reviewing a book. Next week, we're going to be reviewing a book called The Silent Patient. It is a book by, I don't want to say his last name wrong, so y'all forgive me. It's a book by Alex Michaelides. And it is a kind of described as a mystery, thriller, and suspense. Let me read the description for you guys, just in case you're interested in this book. I've heard very good things about this book. It gets really good reviews. I'm very excited to read this book, especially because thrillers, I'm telling you, thrillers, one of my favorite books, one of my favorite genres. And so I'll read the description for you guys so you kind of know what the book's about and if you're interested in reading the book. Alicia Berenson's life is seemingly perfect. A famous painter married to an in-demand fashion photographer, she lives in a grand house with big windows overlooking a park in one of London's most desirable areas. One evening, her husband Gabriel returns home late from a fashion shoot, and Alicia shoots him 5 times in the face and then never speaks another word. Alicia's refusal to talk or give any kind of explanation turns a domestic tragedy into something far grander. A mystery that captures the public imagination and casts Alicia into notoriety. The price of her art skyrockets, and she, the silent patient, is hidden away from the tabloids and spotlight at the Grove, a secure forensic unit in North London. Theo Faber is a criminal psychotherapist who has waited a long time for the opportunity to work with Alicia. His determination to get her to talk and unravel the mystery of why she shot her husband takes him down a twisting path into his own motivations, a search for the truth that threatens to consume him. Now, guys, did that not sound great or what? This book, I'm really, really excited about. Black Cake, I was kind of iffy on it. And still, after reading the book, I'm kind of iffy on it. If you listen to this podcast or if you are considering reading Black Cake, it is not a book that I would recommend to readers. unless you're interested in that specific kind of book. If you just want like something leisurely to read, Black Cake was great. But The Silent Patient, I'm really excited about. I love a good thriller. I need a page turner. Nothing gets my bookworm banter going like a good page turner. So I'm very, very excited about it. So you guys come back next week for another episode. We'll be featuring The Silent Patient. I'll leave the name of the book and the author in the description. So if you guys want to buy it, go out, get your books, and we'll see you next week. Have a good day.